Good morning. Welcome to the 2020 MBBS batch of PIMS. And we'll start our first class on pre-hospital care. The one person, there's one accident every minute in India, and in every 4 minutes, one person dies because of a road traffic accident. Of course, there are other reasons of trauma as well, right, besides road traffic accident. And therefore, we are facing as humanity a huge burden of death and morbidity because of injury. And this is rapidly on increase. So what should we do? The first thing is prevention is better than cure, and therefore the first thing is risk mitigation. So supposing the burden of disease, of any health problem, is in terms of disability adjusted life years lost, disability adjusted life years lost. For example, if a person is expected to live for 67 years and he dies in an accident at, let us say, 60, then 7 life years have been lost. But supposing he becomes disabled, the World Bank has graded disability into 6 grades, 1 to 6, 6 being higher than 1. And therefore, we sort of adjust by this number the mortality life years lost and decrease the disability adjusted life year lost by that particular incidence by the lesser the disability, lesser the decrease. For example, if 6 is the disability grade, we would decrease the life years lost by much more than if 1 is the grade of disability. So this unit is called as disability adjusted life years lost. And any strategy to prevent this burden, this global burden of any problem, any health problem, in this case the trauma, is the cost effectiveness of that strategy. For example, to save 1 Delhi because of trauma, if we make all the roads two-way so that the vehicles do not collide head-on and their collision speed is actually subtracted rather than added as in head-on collision, then we'll have to spend 40,000 rupees per Delhi loss. If we spend in pre-hospital care, you can imagine that 70% of the trauma victims die before they reach the hospital. Therefore, if we invest in pre-hospital care, if we train the first responder or the layman to respond correctly to disaster or trauma situation, then we will have to spend rupees 400 per Delhi saved. If we invest in hospitals, we'll have to spend 14,000. Therefore, pre-hospital care is a very, very viable and a cost-effective strategy to decrease the Delhi loss because of trauma. After understanding that, let us put you in a situation where you are actually faced with a victim on the roadside. A motorcycle victim with a helmet on has sustained an accident, is bleeding on the roadside, and you wearing a white coat are available there. Now, what is most likely to happen to you? I'll tell you what will happen. You will panic. What is panic? Panic is a situation which you face where you desperately want to or have to do something about it and you do not know what to do. So, the treatment of panic is plan and also practice the plan. Because karat karat abhyasate jadamat hot sujan rasri avat jaatte sil par parat nisan. In fact, entire medicine is recognizing the problem correctly and reacting to it in a time critical manner. So, where do you have to react? Either you have to react pre-hospital, or you have to react during retrieval, or you have to react in emergency, or you have to react in a convalescent ward, or you have to advise correct reaction by people who are around the support system of the victim after discharge and then during rehabilitation. Today we will cover the pre-hospital reaction of the individual. So first of all, as a planner, you can have many perspectives. You can be a health secretary who's planning to cater to this huge burden of disease. You can be a hospital who is the service provider, or you can be the patient. There's the patient's perspective also. So depending on what perspective you have, the first thing is risk prevention or risk mitigation. And risks of trauma, as I told you, are not only by road traffic accident. They have been classified by this beautiful chaupai from Ramcharitmanas, which says Chitijal Pavak Gagan Samira Panch Rachitiya Adam Sarira. Chiti means earth, Jal means water, Pavak means energy, Gagan means space, and Samira, for example, if you are lost in ocean, it is space which affects you, and Samira means wind. And these panch tats make life. Panch Rachit Yah Adam Sarira. Sarira means life. So from the COVID virus to Kasab shooting in the metro station, the human being, all these can cause injury. And depending on how many are injured, the situation is classified as emergency or disaster. If more than 3 are injured, it is disaster. If less than 3 are injured, it is emergency. And emergency is defined as an event which will cause harm if not responded to in a time critical manner. So you must remember the definition of emergency. So in a disaster, what should you do? The first thing is save yourself first. If you hear a bullet fire on a platform, as for example when Kasab was firing in a metro station, what should you do first? Save yourself first means you hit the ground. You can be shot far more easily when standing than when you hit the ground. And if there is a metro train standing on the platform, go into the train. So you must have a plan to save yourself first. If you don't have that plan, you will probably start running and be shot. So that's the importance of save yourself first. Then help contain the disaster. You know, there was a person who was telling on the mic, on this platform there is shooting. Please enter into the train. And many people entered the metro train. And so many people survived the bullets because they entered into the metro train. So this fellow who was announcing actually helped contain the disaster. And I think he deserves a lot of credit. So he was on the mic. And if you have a mic, you can announce, you can control. Then third thing is you must move yourself and victim to safe place. Get into the metro. Get into the metro train. It will be much more difficult to find you and shoot you in the metro train. And then finally, you have to call for help. As soon as you have time, you have to call for help if there are more than 3 people injured. In call for help, you must know who to call and what to say. So at AIMS Patna, we digitalized this call for help and called the app which was called as Sankat Sanket. Now this Sankat Sanket has SMS messages, well scripted SMS messages. And you have to simply say, I am calling from this place and this has happened. And then you can simply punch the message and that message will go. It can be, I am being tracked by somebody who can kill me, I am a woman in distress, or whatever the message. You simply tap it, it will go. It will also carry with it the position of the mobile and the time. And the receiver of these messages were auto drivers who had special training in first aid. They were called as Sankat Mochan Nagriks. And the nearest auto driver by the GPS would move into the place and help you. So that was how we designed the Sankat Sanket, and we tried to. This would also go to the police and the fire. So this is how we made the Sankat Sanket. AIMS Patna made the Sankat Sanket in Patna, and we tried to optimize a model by which time critical help can reach the victim. Then the fourth thing is classify. So this triage system or classifying system was developed by Embryo Pare, who was the chief military surgeon of Napoleon the Great. Now he designed a flag system. You see everybody in the war, after the battle. You put a black tag on a person who's dead, a red who's in danger of death, an orange tag which needs pre-hospital care, a blue tag which needs hospitalization, transportation to the hospital, and a green tag which can be treated on a OPD basis. So this flag system was developed by Embryo Pare. Now we have simplified this and we simply say classify people into walking, talking, breathing, bleeding, broken, dying. Take help from walking, talking, breathing and help the bleeding, broken, dying. Now bleeding. Blood comes out of the vessel because the inner pressure is higher than outer pressure. You decrease the inner pressure by elevation and you decrease the outer pressure by compression bandage. And you maintain the pressure or the compression bandage till the clot seals this opening. Now, tying a compression bandage is a skill which you must learn in the ward. And you must be good at it. About the tourniquet, there are 4 principles that govern a tourniquet. First, avoid it as far as possible. The second, always tie it on a single bone, not on the forearm or the leg. Third, not too tight, not too loose. So you must be able to grade the tightness, and there's a skill to it which grades the tightness just to obliterate the pulse. And the fourth is, you must ensure release for 5 minutes every 1 hour. Otherwise, there will be vascular insufficiency or gangrene. Then for the broken, the principle is splint them where they lie. Upper limb to the chest, lower limbs to each other, or if you can get a splint, use a splint. Again, splinting is a skill. Then the splinting of spine or immobilization of spine is the most important thing. Because if the cervical spine is fractured or dislocated, and in removing the helmet you move the cervical spine, then above C3, 4, 5, the phrenic nerve will go, there will be respiratory arrest and the person will die then and there. So removing the helmet is a skill. And as far as cervical spine is concerned, the first precaution is collar. The second precaution is that if you have to roll an unconscious patient into a coma position where you expect that the vomit will go out rather than be aspirated, in that circumstance you have to put a pillow which has a height of the shoulder to the cheek so that the neck is not tilted. And the third thing is that when you roll, the head, the shoulder, the pelvis should roll together, and that maneuver is called as log roll. About the other spine, if this is the site of fracture, this is the, let us say, the cervical spine, the thoracic spine, and this is the cervical spine, the thoracic spine, the lumbar and the sacrum. This is the sacrum. Here is the pelvis, here is the shoulder. So you handshake below the site of fracture. Two people. One hip lifts the shoulder, the other lifts the pelvis. So this is called as the handshake method of picking up the patient, and always put him on a hard stretcher so that this spine doesn't become bowed like this and this fracture doesn't cause a spinal cord injury. So this is the handshake method of lifting the patient. Now dying. So bleeding, broken, dying. Now what can kill the patient? First is cervical spine. So be careful about the cervical spine. The second thing is bleeding and shock. You stop the bleeding, but still you think you must diagnose shock. If there is blood somewhere, it means the patient is in shock. You need not have a cold, clammy skin and a gasping patient. Or if you diagnose shock by those physical signs, you have diagnosed shock for post-mortem purposes, because the shock will be irreversible, and no matter what you do, the patient will not survive. And therefore, shock is always diagnosed by suspicion, not by the cold, clammy skin and a gasping patient. And what do you have to do? American Army instructions for war victims. Put in a drip first, see the pulse later. Alright. And what do you replace? Replace blood by blood as soon as possible, as fast as possible. If not blood, plasma. If not plasma, plasma expander. If not plasma expander, ring lactate. And before you do this, take a sample for dropping and matching of blood. Okay, take a sample. Then if there is a wound, give an antibiotic and put the patient nil orally. Then what else can kill the patient? Pneumothorax. So here is a pneumothorax. The lung has collapsed and you see that there is air, blood or both or pus in this. Now if during inspiration there will be less negative pressure in this lung as compared to this, and therefore air will flow from this side to this side. In expiration there will be more positive pressure here as compared to here. Therefore the air will flow from this side to this side, and therefore air will keep on flowing across the carina of the trachea. Here is the carina. Right to left. No air from outside. This is called as pendular air movement. It is diagnosed by a mediastinal flutter. If you see it in screening, the mediastinum will keep on moving from this side to this side laterally. And so this is one, ventilation fails. The second thing is that in the collapsed lung, the peripheral vascular resistance becomes less. And therefore, the entire output from the right side of the heart passes through the collapsed lung, and without getting oxygenated, returns into the left ventricle. So where there is air, there is no blood. And where there is blood, there is no air. This is called as perfusion ventilation dissociation, and it will kill the patient. So what have you got to do it in a tension pneumothorax? A needle in the pleura to decompress it, and an intercostal drainage. Then after this, you transport the patient appropriately. If he has a neurosurgery, don't transport him to a PHC. Transport appropriately with full information, including your contact, as fast as possible, and always put the patient nil orally and give an antibiotic. Alright, because initially in the initial 6 hours, it is contamination. After that, it becomes infection. Therefore, antibiotic is a method of first response. Now, this plan is by no means comprehensive, no means perfect. As your experience increases, you can add, detract, or modify. But you must have a plan and you must practice it. Thank you.